It was just a little something. I can't remember what it was. It was probably something like, oh, you have a grey hair, and whatever, something to do with her appearance, probably. Just to be wicked, just to be.
And then you immediately slapped yourself in the face. That's
That's a really funny one. It really hurt. But the other times when it was something more serious and I wasn't listening, there was a sense of urgency. Like, do it now, do it. And it was like a growing urgency that if you don't do it, something terrible is going to happen, right? And I wasn't able to switch that off. So it would just get worse and worse and worse, and I had to then like run to the place or whatever and be there, And then of course I'd be out of breath and So I learned very quickly that it wasn't really my choice. It wasn't something that I had a saying in. And then we come into the other side of that, where's the free will and that, right? And we talked about that a little bit before, but with regards to, doing the things that I was told to do, there's a very, very good way to tell what is ego telling you something to do, telling you to do something. If it's ego, if it's some other negative entity trying to take you over to do bad things, or maybe things that you think are good but really are not. Or if it's really from source, which is how I would describe it, We can give it lots of names. I find that people understand it better if I say, my guides or my higher self is saying this right now. And they will understand that, and it is true. It is true. That's what happens. And I didn't need to translate it or give it a personality, so it wouldn't, even though I would say my guide is telling me to do this now, I can describe it, and it describes it perfectly. For me, it wasn't an entity guide. It was just the same thing, but if you take the identity away, and it would just be the thing. That's how it comes through. And the really good way to distinguish between that pure energy from source that is your guide or your higher self, and ego or another negative entity that's trying to influence you, is to listen to your bodies. And the best way to learn how to do that is to go into a very, very open space within yourself and then tell yourself a lie. Instead of saying, your name's Bill, you say my name is George. And that will resonate wrong somehow, somewhere. Will feel odd, it will feel wrong. And then when it's true and when it's not, when it's source and when it isn't, when it's you, the genuine higher self you, and when it isn't.
It's actually like what they do to calibrate a lie detector.
Ah, there you go.
They do the same thing.
Right.
They ask somebody to deliberately tell a lie so that they see the reaction on the machine. And in fact, you do this with pendulums as well sometimes.
Yes, right. Yeah. That's a very good way to put it, yeah. Yeah.
I understand. Now, okay, so if we take the girl on the park bench as an example, when you get a direct knowing that is what you must do, and you go there, and sure enough, there she is, and something happens, presumably, and you may not know what that is, and then the girl goes away, and then that's the end of your job.
Yes.
You may have cured her, or healed her, or stopped her from killing herself, or resolved a problem, or something. But what is that process? How does it work? How can you explain this? How can you explain what's happening?
The best way to describe it would be that my focus goes to her. And I am there 110% in every dimension, in every time space, for that moment. That's how I can, but I don't do anything. I don't have any intention. I don't have any attachment to outcome. I don't have any curiosity. Nothing. It's just complete focus, and what appears to happen is that there's something else, whatever it is, the divine force, energy, chi, whatever, comes through and directly into her to resolve and do whatever, that I have no idea what it is. And then it's done.
There must be some examples that you could give where you did actually get feedback on that and you did see the transformational effect. Can you share some examples of that?
Yes. For example, there is an example, and it goes back to the person who spoke Portuguese when I was a teenager. I must have been about 12 or 13 years old at the time. Let me think. I think I was 13, but I could have been 12. And my mum used to be a very outgoing person, very extroverted, and she used to have parties at our house most weekends. So there was always a party at our house, and there would be like 50 people plus at the parties. And that moment, normally, because I'm not an extrovert, I would go into the room and I would scan the room and see who wasn't vibrating at a high level or who was vibrating at the lowest level, and I would just go and sit next to them. That's what I would do.
Just because you wanted to?
Yeah, that was the natural thing for me to do.
Okay.
That's what I was here for, I suppose, right?
Okay.
It's like, why do we breathe, Because you need to. Or because it's something that we do. And so I would sit next to them and I would sense their vibration going higher and higher and higher. Occasionally I would look and see kind of shadow bits, and I would kind of move those out of the way, but only if I was told. It's like, oh, look at that focus on that little bit there, and as I was looking at it, it would just dissolve and go away. But with this person, I was sitting next to him, like I said, for about an hour or two, and we were talking away. We had a huge long conversation all about different things, different topics and stuff, and all of a sudden he turns around to me and he says, "Where did you learn Portuguese?" And I look at him and says, "Never, I can't speak Portuguese." And he says, "Oh, but you've been speaking Portuguese to me for the past hour, 2 hours." And I look at him and says, "No, I haven't." At the time my main language was Spanish, so I said, I was actually speaking Spanish. And he says, "No, you weren't. I can't speak Spanish. You've been speaking to me in Portuguese." And I said, at that moment I thought, okay, this guy's a little bit of a nutter. So I'll just quietly get up and go to the other side of the room, right? So that's what I said. I said, "Oh, well, it was nice meeting you." And I got up and I moved to the other side of the room. A few days later, I think it might have been about a week later, he came back to the house and he had a conversation with my mother, and I kind of listened in, and he said that when he was at the party, and for like 4 months he had known that he had a terminal illness, and he only had like weeks to live. I don't know what the illness was. That he had gone back to the doctor after the party, and he no longer had a terminal illness. He was cured. There was nothing wrong with him. And
he just disappeared.
He had just disappeared. And he immediately knew that it had been me, according to him, right? Because he was from Brazil, and in Brazil they have a lot of knowledge about healers and what healers can do. And according to him, one of the things that these people can do is speak in different languages. That there's special kids and adults that can talk to the patient in their own language naturally. So he knew, he had put two and two together, and he came back and he wanted to thank me and for healing him and stuff like that. And then so that was a feedback of something that had happened that I had no idea what was happening at the time, right? I had no idea that he was sick, and I had no idea that he had been healed. And even up to today, my memory is that I was speaking in Spanish. So I had no idea that I was speaking in Portuguese. So, and really, it was irrelevant. I didn't need to know any of that stuff. I really didn't. but I found out, and then other things have happened, and occasionally people will come up and say, you know, this happened or whatever, and sometimes a third person that didn't know that I had done a certain psychic mission will come up later and tell me, say something like, I just had a dream and I know I have to tell you this dream. I've been told that I have to tell you this dream. And it's normally the conclusion to the work that I've done. So they tell me what happened, you know. And it's really interesting because normally I'm not curious. I'm not curious about what's happening or to get validation or objective proof. But what I've found out is that sometimes that validation and objective proof is necessary for others.
In which case then it manifests as part of the whole package.
Right, right.
I understand. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And okay, so just then you gave the example of somebody who was physically relieved of an illness, was cured of an illness, just because you sat with him and talked with him for a couple of hours.
Yes.
What sorts of other transformational things might happen? I mean, I presume it's much more than just physical healing.
Yes. There will be like a disentangling of energy sometimes in the person, so they can think more clearly. And occasionally I will be sent to a light worker who needs to finish a mission, or who needs to continue a mission that they're about to drop, right? And that's happened a few times, and it has manifested in different ways. And
so it's like a support structure for people who are already doing good work.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Because
you see, like a light worker, especially somebody who has a very big mission, will have there will be entities and people trying to stop them, right? And there are points in time that they could have been taken out of that mission, either physically, completely, or by just killing their will to carry on in that mission. Or even there's juncture points where the person is about to start their mission, and they're in that kind of decision-making point, and so much negativity is injected into them that they will probably decide not to do it. So I come in and counter that negativity so that they can make a free will choice.
Without being negatively influenced.
Right.
So
right.
So it's like you shield them from the negative influence, which then allows them to make their free will decision.
Exactly. And then they can decide to go ahead, and they can decide not to go ahead, but it's their free will. It's an inner decision, not forced by the negativity that's coming their way.
Do you have any idea or suspicions or knowledge that there are some fairly large things that you have done, some fairly major things that, I mean, not just related, for instance, to one person's personal life, but to something that's much more far-reaching than
that? I'm not really understanding the question, because it's all about individual beings at the end of the day. I mean, there's different things that I do. All I do is just focus my attention on something or someone, and then that something or someone will be able to resolve, their vibration. It's all, and then we have to go back to what is it all for, and it's all about raising the level of vibration of the planet. So, for example, if I focus my attention on an extremely negative being, right, which did happen recently, well, actually I've done that quite a bit, but there was one that was really big, a really big negative being, and when my attention focuses on it, it's like the entire universe looks at it, this being, and then that being can do various things. They can dissolve into oneness. They can drop the body and leave. and go and reincarnate in a planet where it's okay to be negative, but it's not okay to do it now on the planet Earth at that level, right? And or they can ask for clemency, and they can be transformed into a light being. And so recently I had an experience where I was asked to hang out with this extremely negative being, like really, really negative person on the planet. At a psychic level, it wasn't an everyday level. I mean, this person was extremely powerful in every level. On a social level, psychic level, mystical level, very, very powerful, very, very dark.
And without going into all the details, unless you want to, what was the outcome of that assignment, of that mission with that person?
That was a very interesting outcome, because one of the things that I was asked to do was to hang out with this person on his space. And I didn't want to do that because it was like an icky yucky person, very negative. He was showing me stuff that was horrible about the things that I used to do, or he did in life to others on a mass scale. And so I was kind of not wanting to hang out with him. And then it came through, I talked to a friend of mine who's a very, very in-tuned psychic and also very highly aware. And I was telling her this tale, and I said, well, it feels almost like this guy has all this power. It's like he's the most powerful person on the planet, but he can't tell anybody about it, and he wants me to write the book about what he can do and what he has done in life. And she said, I feel really strongly that you have to do that. I think that you have to sit with him and let him write this book. And this is sitting with him and writing the book would be at a very psychic level, right? We would be hanging out at a psychic level, and he would be dictating this book to me. So I did that. I hung out with him, and for a few weeks I was taking down notes, and it was the most horrendous things that this person was doing. And then I went on to Google and I did a little bit of research, and this stuff is documented. It's like there's people out there who are writing about this is what's going on and this is what these people are doing. We're talking about human sacrifice and like children being sacrificed, and their blood drunk and stuff like that. It's just like totally out of this world things that I would never have imagined were happening on the planet. And this is the bloke we were talking about. After a few weeks, I had this experience where I came out of the body and I was sent to this huge mansion. Now, when I see a mansion, it's normally how I interpret it is that it's the person's being, the person's maybe body and life. And this was a huge mansion, and there was this other person outside it. It was like a man, and he was. I saw when I looked at him, I thought, oh, there's like a psychic there, and he had all these books and crosses and stuff, and he was waiting to get into the house to get rid of this being, right? And then I thought, oh my goodness, if he goes into that house, his French fries, he's gonna be completely destroyed. He has to stay here. So I kind of conveyed that image to him: stay here, don't go in the house. And he did. He stayed there, and I went inside myself, and it was all darkness. It was very evil energy. And when I walk into that situation, you see, there's no judgment. The moment you inject judgment into darkness, you're gone. You're destroyed. You can't be there. It was just energy. It was like I'm floating in blueness or in redness or in greenness. That's how I experienced it.